Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Kashif Booth podcast. If you're new here, each week I sit down with a guest and we discuss their career so far, the highs, the lows, and what's next for them. Today's guest is Natalie Campbell-Reid. She's a screenwriter from London. And fun fact, we actually went to school together. So we know each other for like 21 years. It's weird to say that.
Yeah,
Very weird to say that. But welcome to the show, Natalie. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy it's Easter weekend. But the way this rain is going, I don't know if I'm going to be able to enjoy it the way I want to, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've had my like Easter bun and cheese, like for anyone who doesn't know, like Jamaican culture vibes. So I'm feeling very good.
You know what? I need some bullet cake as well. Like I need some bullet
Mm,
cake, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Some beer maybe. So yeah, like my aunt did like, like the typical Jamaican soup last week. I'm
Mhm.
like, I wish they did this week, but it's fine.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. My mum was frying fish all last night. I'm like, I'm ready. Like,
Yeah.
where's the hard bread? Like, I'm ready to
Okay,
go.
exactly. And if you guys don't know, if you're not Jamaican, we eat fried fish all the time on Good Friday. There's no carcass today, okay? Put that pork away. You know
None
exactly.
allowed, okay? Just
Exactly.
fish.
Yeah, just finished. Okay. I remember one time I was eating gammon. I was like, this should be all right. And I'm like, no, it's still pork. I was young and naive. Or I was like, let me try some chicken. It's like, no, that's white meat. So it was
Mhm.
a mess. So
Just
yeah,
fish. Yeah.
exactly. Well, thanks for coming on the show. As you know, we reconnected last year, which was a funny story in a way because you followed me on Twitter and I was like, oh, cool, this girl's a streamer. Let me just, oh, follow back, network. It wasn't until you DM'd me and was like, oh, long time. I was like, oh, wow, this is Natalie. Like, and
Yeah.
put you together that we had gone to school together. So, like, did you realize it was me when you followed me? Uh,
Yes, because I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was like Neko, who we also went to school with.
yes, I remember
And
Nick.
I feel like she was like, oh, like you're doing screenwriting. I'm sure like Kashif is doing the same thing. You should just like follow each other. So I just followed you on Twitter just to, like, just. I
Hmm.
was like, I haven't actually messaged, and this is one of my bad points. And
Okay.
to anyone out there who's like networking and stuff, always just message people. I'm just like, I'll follow people, and then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I followed them. And then later on, I'm like, but you haven't spoken to them yet. I'm like,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
I
yes,
should
yes.
actually message him
Yeah.
and like engage in a conversation. So
No,
yeah.
I used to see that all the time. I was in everyone's DMs. Like I'd follow somebody or they'd follow me and it'd be like a follow back. And then after a while, I'd send them a message and be like, this was before COVID. So I used to be
Mm,
like, hey, let's have a meeting, let's talk, let's, you know, see if how we can work together. Or sometimes I would take them out for a coffee and then that would be just a way to network and get to know each
yeah.
other. I've met so many talented people from Twitter and
Mm,
like Instagram and even now TikTok as well. So it is a great way to network. But yeah, when you messaged, I was like, wow, put two and two together. I don't know what it is, but post leaving school, it's
mm,
like I blocked that out of my life because
yeah.
sometimes I see people come up to me, I'm like, I'm squinting. This happened to me the other day. I saw this guy. Do you remember Daniel Henry from school?
Yeah.
I saw him at Balham Station and he approached me and I had to squint like this was like, who is this? I was like, oh, is that you? So I don't know. It's really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I blocked that out. But yeah, but it was good to reconnect and then to find
Yeah.
out that, you're doing the same thing as me. So how did you get into screenwriting?
Oh, it's been a long and checkered road. Like, because I didn't go like, I was gonna say I didn't go the traditional route, but like, is it really a traditional route? How many people do the whole like, oh yeah, I've gone to like film school or like I did media and then I've got into writing. I don't know. But that wasn't my path. I studied psychology at uni. I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to do. Like early on, like when I was younger, I knew I wanted to write. And that was actually the first sort of career I wanted was to be an author. But um being born to like Caribbean parents, they were like, we did not leave paradise to come to England for you to be a struggling writer. It's not the plan. So yeah, so I just sort of like went on. I studied psychology. I really enjoyed that, and then was looking for careers outside of that. So I did 10 years like doing marketing for like events and tech. And then I call screenwriting my like pandemic pivot because it was like a time where I was on furlough for like 3 months, actually longer than that. But I just had a lot of time to sit down and think about what it was I actually wanted from this next phase of my career. And I think you especially start to have a lot of those thoughts when you're turning 30 anyway. It's just a lot about like, okay, so what has the last decade been and what do I want for the next one? And that's when I started to remember. I was like, well, actually, you've always wanted to write. And I'm quite flexible in terms of like medium. Like I was like, does it need to be a book? Does it need to, what kind of writing do I want to do? And I just thought, in terms of getting a point of view or a message out, screenwriting was just the one to go for. Because I think books really limit your audience, but when you go for screen, it's like your audience is so broad and so wide, and you can affect so many more people. Just even thinking about the things that I've watched that have had like a huge impact on my life, or even just like cultural moments where I don't know, for example, like Friends, how many people thought that peeing on like an octopus sting was like going to be a thing to cure it? It's like, oh, that's because everyone watched this one episode
Yeah,
of television.
exactly, exactly.
So yeah, so that's how I came to realize I was like, okay, yeah, so I want to pursue screenwriting. And then I actually got a free subscription to, I won a free subscription to Masterclass.
Mhm.
And I did Shonda Rhimes' Writing for Television Masterclass on there, which is where I learned how to write a screenplay and a script as well.
Great. So how did you transition from going from marketing into working in film and TV now?
So I, for one, I went freelance initially. So I was like, I sort of started to edge my way out of marketing. I was like freelancing for a bit, and then I took up a backstage role at QVC. That was my first like on-set role. I say on-set role, but like behind the scenes role. And then from there, I took some time off for like a few months to focus on writing my script. So I wrote the first draft of my script, and in between there, I found a job working as an executive assistant for a marketing and sales agency for films. And that was literally just, I stumbled across that on Twitter. I wasn't looking for exec assistant jobs.
Mhm.
I just knew I had a set of skills that I'd built up over the last 10 years, and I was looking for any job that would utilize those skills. And I just came across that, and yeah, it just worked out. It was like, okay, you're now working in the industry that you also like want to write in. So that was a really cool sort of serendipitous moment. And just the fact that it came about through Twitter was like, okay, this is random.
That's really good. That's really good. And that's the really good thing about social media. Like there's
Mm.
so much opportunities. Like that's where most jobs come from. Like you even like find out that Facebook is like key. It might be for
Mhm.
quote unquote old people, but those Facebook groups are essential. Like people are posting in there all the time and that's how opportunities can come. So that's really good. So are you still with that company or did you kind of move on? Okay. And how have you found that transition from being in marketing industry to film and TV?
Um, to be fair, it's not, I don't think it's been that different. I feel like in terms of in terms of my skills, I guess because they were just really transferable. So in terms of like that, I didn't really struggle. But I think with any new industry or any new company you join, there's always a language to learn. And
Mhm.
so that was like the learning curve I had to go on, where I was sort of like, what's a rough cut and like what's a fine cut and what's picture lock and like what are all these things.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of terminology that I felt like I had to learn. But even I mean I had like a couple months ago I had like my 1 year review at work, and my manager was like, put it in perspective, like a year and a half ago you were not even working in this industry, like you were so like fish out of water, had no idea what any of these things are, and now you're smashing it. And it's just like, I was like, oh yeah, like I didn't really, you forget how much like knowledge you acquire.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's been a massive learning curve in terms of figuring out. And I think it's quite different as well because most of my writing is like television, whereas I work in film.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to be on the sort of like business side of the industry in
Mhm.
terms of work, and then on the creative side in terms of like my own personal pursuit. Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. So when it comes to writing for TV, how have you found that? Because I know you've been journaling your journey through your own podcast and on TikTok and on Twitter. I love your honesty. And listen, being a writer is hard. Okay. I've even kind of transitioned back into writing after building up my career and portfolio as being a producer. And I know certain goals that I want to achieve, I have to be writing because the industry here is different from how it is in like the US in terms of like where you can go within your career within certain fields. So how have you found learning how to write for TV? Because it's not just as easy as just like, oh, I've got an idea, let me just write it down. So do you prefer doing a beat sheet first, or do you prefer like just writing and seeing how it goes?
Yeah. Oh, I love this stuff. This is the geeky stuff. I love this.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
I am very like I'm like very process driven on one side of my brain, and then like there's the creative side as well. But so I love a beat sheet. I love like I have I don't know if you know like Trello, but it's like a project management tool.
Okay.
And I basically use that to track all my scripts. So I literally have like from the first, you know, like when you have an idea just drop out of the sky and you're
Mhm.
like, ah, like I put that into a list. So it's like I have all of those ideas tracked on one end, and then I have all the different stages of the script. So it's like, you know, creating a log line, creating a synopsis. Have you done your one pager? Have you done, I don't know, a beat sheet, an outline, and a treatment or whatever? So I have all of those mapped out. So I sort of move each project along that way. But I can't just jump in and write, because I find when I do that, I get lost. And I'm like, I
Mm,
just have no sense of where the story is going. And I had this a lot actually when I was when we were in school actually. I used to write stories a lot. So I just write in like notebooks, but I had no plan in mind for the story. So I was just sort of finding it, but it meant nothing got finished because
mm,
it was just like I'd write myself into a corner and I'd be like, well, that's where the story ends there because I can't figure this out. Um, so, so I find beat sheets really helpful, especially as well from like a structure point of view. So I sometimes like read scripts for friends, and I feel like when I've read scripts for friends and I've read like industry scripts, you can see where it's like, oh, there's not that thing that's moving the story along. You sort of
mhm.
just feel like you're sort of stagnant.
Yeah.
I read it in my own scripts as well, like especially the first draft where I'm like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
What are you actually doing? So yeah, I do love a beat sheet. Do you love it? Do you like beat sheets, or do you?
Yes, now that I've got into writing again, I do prefer it because I used to just write. I used to have an idea, and then I remember Shonda Rhimes talking about a hum she gets into when she writes, and I used to get into this zone, and I just used to write for hours, and then I'd go back and edit it the way I want it to because at the time I didn't know where I wanted to take the character, so I was also afraid of beat sheets. I felt like that would ruin the process, but as I've now got back into writing the last year or so, it really has helped because I'm able to flesh out the characters more, flesh out the story, and go back to it before I've even put like pen to paper on the script. I'm able to really hone in on it because sometimes, like, I've come up with a conflict. I'm like, ah, this is so cliche. I hate it. Like, ugh. And then I go back, I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I can switch it out. Oh, okay, I can take that conflict and make it more comical and make it more serious or really take that out. So that's what I really like about a beat sheet. It makes me more excited so that when I go to write, it's so structured and I know exactly what I want to do. And then when you do the multiple drafts, it's easier for you to just go to a specific section or act or which storyline, because I'm writing for TV as well, which A or B storyline you want to just kind of amend. And so it really is useful, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say as well, it's like I think sometimes the pushback I see from people is they feel like it sort of ruins like the creativity of it. But I find even when I do a beat sheet, going into writing, there's still so much of the story to find, because
Yeah.
it's like now it's like the characters are breathing and they're actually like doing things. And you're like I remember like in one of my scripts, I did not have this in the beat sheet at all. There was just a character who I was like, I'd already beat it out, but then when as I was writing it, I found like a twist in her story.
Hmm.
that just emerged from the
Yeah.
writing. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is this is why I love this, because it's literally just like
Yes.
I had this whole plan, and yeah, the plan's great and it still works, but now I sort of understand her motivation in a different way. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, that just emerged from the process of writing itself. So there's still a lot to be discovered in the writing process. And not to say like beat sheets like totally just,
Hmm.
ruin it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they just give you a structure to work within.
I agree. So why TV and not film? Why have you chosen to write for TV?
Um, I was like, do I go with the narcissistic answer? Or should I go with So the first thought that came to mind is when I did Shonda Rhimes's masterclass, she had said that um in terms of like the respect for writers is greater in TV than it is in film.
Mm,
But that was something that stuck with me because I mean I don't know the industry, right? So that was like my first introduction to writing and all of that stuff. And obviously it's also a very like American slant because it's the whole showrunner
yeah.
writer vibe, right? So that was the first thing that popped into my mind. But in terms of like writing itself, I like the fact that in TV you can sit with your characters. And I just find myself, in terms of like the things that I like to watch, there are people who really, really, really love film, like who will always seek out watching film, whereas I'll always seek out a show
Yeah.
because I want to sit with the characters like and go on that arc with them.
Hmm.
And even if like you're watching a sitcom, there isn't necessarily like a very not like a clear arc, but like the arc is over seasons, right? So that's a much longer span of time, but you've got the jokes in between, so there's entertainment that's
Yeah.
happening.
Yes.
But yeah, I just love the whole character piece and being able to really sit with them and let them breathe like that.
Mm.
But I do also have film ideas, so I would like to write a film at one point as well.
No, I agree. I like that because I love film too, and I do want to write some feature film scripts, but I prefer TV first because I'm such a lover of TV. Like you said, I love being able to take a character on a journey throughout a season or a series and how you see the character development and how the character grows. And that's what I love to do. And you can do that in a show. You can do it in a movie, but you have to kind of fit it in that three-act structure, like what the message is of the film as well. But for a show, you can have 6 seasons for a character to kind of go through all the different ups and downs and where you want to take them. So that's what I really love about it. And yeah, I didn't know that TV was more respected than film in that way in terms of writing. So that's quite interesting that Shonda Rhimes said it, but I get it because it's completely different. So okay,
I
good.
think it's just like with what you see about films, right? It's always
Mhm.
the director. And I know you have like writer directors, but it's like
Mm.
a film by Christopher Nolan, a film
Yeah,
by
yeah,
Martin
yeah.
Scorsese. Like
Mm.
it's never, sometimes I find myself, I was like, I got an Odeon Unlimited pass recently, and I found myself having to search for who the writer was. Like I was like, where, where
No,
is
that's actually very true. Very
where is
good
the
point.
information? Why are they not doing any interviews? Like
Mhm.
they seem to be like a lot more
Mhm.
cachet. But then, like I feel like writers aren't really like the people who love to stand up front necessarily and like do all that anyway. So yeah, I don't know if it's entirely true. And then someone had said to me in terms of like the UK point of view that the place where writers are most respected is in theatre and in plays.
Yeah, true.
So yeah.
No, that's a really good point because when you look at TV directors, no one knows who the hell they are. Like,
Yeah.
I know Matthew A. Cherry because he did Hair Love and he's a predominantly TV director, but that's it. Like, you mostly look for the writers and the producers of like a TV show, and then in film, it's like the director gets all the praise, you know? So that's really true. That's a really good point. So when you are writing, like, do you have like battles with making it not cliche? Because, you might come with a conflict and you're like, damn, this is really basic. Like, do you kind
Yeah.
of battle with that? Or like how is it for you like to avoid cliches? Or do you don't care about them? Do you enjoy adding them to your script?
Um, I think there's like a space for them. So like one of the scripts I'm working on is a mockumentary. So there's a space for cliches in that, right?
Mhm.
But I would say, so when I was doing Shonda Rhimes masterclass, that was one of the things that she brought up was about, how do you avoid sort of stereotypes? And
Mhm.
she suggested actually inverting your character. So say, for example, if you're writing a young female character, how would she change if you were writing her as an old male character?
Okay.
And that's such, she was sort of saying that that's a way that you can create more three-dimensional and maybe like less cliche and different characters, is
Mhm.
just to like check your own assumptions by inverting your characters. So that's an exercise I have used, which I think is helpful.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think that's the easiest way, or the only thing I can really think of in terms of avoiding cliches. But I don't think about it a huge amount, I have to admit. But I don't know if that's just because of like where I'm at with my writing at the moment, where I'm sort of still in that phase of like I've like got one complete script and I'm just working through the like first drafts of the next ones.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
No, the reason why I asked is because I did a screenwriting course last year and the tutor kept on saying, avoid cliches, avoid cliches. I'm like, okay, no pressure, but pressure. Like, no, because
Yeah.
it kind of made me really nervous to kind of come up with ideas, or it made me push me to kind of come up with something so out of the box so
Mhm.
that my tutor didn't think it was cliche. Because you know how some of these tutors are, especially when I did the film degree, they're very snobby. And it's
Mhm.
like, they heavily criticize certain things. So I wanted to make sure that this was amazing. So I pushed myself so much. And then I was able to write an opening scene, which was like for a sci-fi film. And I've never written a sci-fi project. So I didn't know where the hell to take it. So I literally couldn't even finish that script because I just was like, I don't know what to do here. This is so far out of my comfort zone. So I don't know where to take it. So that's why I wanted to know, see what your thoughts on being, cliche is. But I think for me, I've learned that it's okay to be cliche and just kind of go back and rework it. If you're not 100% happy with where you're taking the story, then that means it's not done. So you just have
Mhm.
to kind of go back as well.
Yeah,
So,
and I would argue as well, like to be contrarian, because I
mhm,
like to do that sometimes. It's just like cliche to who? Like, if it's true to your character, is it cliche?
mhm,
And I just think ultimately everything, I mean, character's like a big part of like what I'm working on at the moment, because I want to get better at just like character development. But just yeah, if that's true to how your character would react or a situation that would arise in this scenario, like I would argue that it's not cliche. It's
yeah,
like that's
mhm,
their story.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's just maybe it's not that person or that tutor who's reading it, they're just not the audience for it.
yeah.
And someone else will be.
'Cause
So
everything is so subjective anyway. There's an audience for everything. Just like how, people were dragging Mia Culpa. Is that how you say
mm,
it? For Tyler
yeah.
Perry's film. It's like he has his audience. He knows his audience. They love his films. So the constant need to attack his work, it doesn't
Mhm.
make sense because he knows his audience. The millions of people are still watching it. It went to #1 on Netflix. Like, and it creates this conversation all the time. So he knows his audience. So it's about just kind of working towards that. And your art, and that's your art, and that's making him many coins in the bank. So, so
Mhm.
yeah. So
He is
when it
not worried about the criticism.
no, he is really not. He's got his studio, he's got everything, like he does not care. So when it comes to like writing as well, your characters, how do you make a distinctive voice between each of them? Because I've had that in the past where people felt like everyone has the same voice. So how do you do that?
I feel like this is something I'm still working on.
Hmm.
I don't think I have this down yet, but what I've been trying to do more recently to create those distinctive voices is one, like listening to people more.
Hmm.
I know that sounds a bit wild, but like just even like when I'm out and about listening to people talk, which actually be really surprising in London. People don't speak that much. I was literally like, I'm walking around, I'm like, this is a really silent city. Like no one's talking to anyone. But yeah, just picking up on how people how people actually talk. Certain like turns of phrases can be really useful to like keep the authenticity of a voice. Um, and I do think as well, it's hard when you're writing because a lot of a person's voice is communicated in the actual speaking.
Yeah.
Like when it's on the page,
Hmm.
it can come across flat, but it's actually in the tone and like how do they say things and like what ways are they carrying themselves across. And right now I'm working on a project which is sort of about like two best friends, and that's something that's really top of mind, is like how am I making sure that they actually sound different,
Hmm. Hmm.
because yes, they're best friends, but like one of them is much more confident and like forward, whereas the other one's a bit more like reserved and shy. And so it's like I'm still working on it basically. Do you have any advice for me?
Oh my gosh, no, I don't. Because I'm trying to figure that out as well. Like, I think for me, I've had two characters I've known for such a long time. I did a web series on them called Nate and Jamie. So I
Mhm,
know those characters very well. And
mhm,
they're the same but very different. One is a smooth talking, suave, very confident guy who's very self-assured. And then one is a little bit naive, frantic, a bit chaotic as well. And he's also the funny character. So I've been able to really define their voices very different. So when
mhm,
I'm writing those characters, I can make the distinction between them. But when
mhm,
it comes to like other characters, like people from different races or ethnicities, I'm like, okay, how can I make it seem that they're not black because I'm black and I'm writing for a black voice? Or how can I show that this white character is amongst the group, but he's not one of those ones who are like a cultural appropriator? How do I
mhm,
show that there's another friend, but he's a little bit more reserved and he's more, keeps to himself? Like, and so I'm picking between that and really trying to see how I can define their voices. And a lot of it I do by just watching stuff. Like I watch stuff, I
mhm,
see how this character is being portrayed or what kind of lines are they saying, and I try to really in the scene descriptions try to add as much descriptions about what they're doing or in their body language and stuff like that, and that just kind of helps me even more. And sometimes when I get feedback I'm able to hear, okay, oh, I don't think the character would do that, so maybe they would do this, and then that helps a little bit more to shape them. But
mhm.
it's a work in progress, honestly, and that's why you redraft and redraft until you get it get it right.
Exactly. And do you know what, actually, to that point, I had a table read last year for like the second version of my sitcom script. And there was a character in there that I never really thought about. Like she was just like a HR personality, but like a small part.
Mhm.
And when the actor played her, she became like my favorite character.
Wow.
I was like, there was something that
Mhm.
the actor did to like her voice. Like when she brought her voice to life, I was like, oh, now I understand like what I'm trying to do with this character and like what she
Mhm.
represents. So I think it's it's an interesting one. But I think if you're yeah, like you said, basically, it's just like if you know your characters as well, then I feel like their voices do emerge on the page as you're doing the drafting. And also like if you're doing stuff like table reads and people are actually reading your work back to you, then it starts to round it out. But yeah, I don't really have a great answer to that, I've got to say.
Well, guys, whoever's listening,
TBE
tweet us.
confirmed.
Yeah, whoever's listening, please tweet me like your tips and tricks as to how we can do this. But it's a work in progress, and that's why I love shows like Abbott Elementary and stuff like that, because each of them has such a distinctive voice. Each of them.
Masterclass in voices.
Oh, brilliant. And I think that's why probably sometimes when you are writing on a show and you've come onto a show, maybe in like season 3 or 4, you already know the characters because you've watched the show. So you can really write for them. Or if you've been writing for them for years, you know specifically this is what they would say, this is how they'd act. And that's
Mhm,
what I love about TV as well, because you can do so much more with like an ensemble cast,
mhm.
like that. And over time, just continue that going. So
Yeah.
that's really
And I
cool.
have a question for you actually,
Okay.
because when you're writing, then do you like to have like an actor in mind who you would like to play the role? Like, do you have a visual in your mind of like who this person is?
I have before because I've done so much independent projects. When I was writing the scripts, it was easier to write for the characters because I knew how the actor would play it. So then
Mm,
that really helped a lot. So I didn't need to do too much. I knew that when we're on set and when I'm talking to them, they'd be able to embody the character. And so it's much easier, especially when you know them and have worked with them in the past. And so, yeah, that's such a great um experience to have because you can trust the actors to take the character and make it their own. And because they know the character so well, they embody it. And for me, I always allowed them to do improv or make it their own as well. And it just to me, it just made it great. And that's what I loved about seeing my words on screen like that. So yeah.
Hmm. And maybe as well, like in terms of voice, it's worth like doing an exercise where you think about the people in your life. And
Yeah.
if you're putting them on the page, how would you make them sound distinctly like them without knowing who they are on the page? For example, like if their name wasn't there, how
Yeah.
would you know that this person is your dad and this person is your sister?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And this is why table reads are so important because you're able to hear it out loud and really hear how the voices are sounding and the words as well. And also if it makes sense or if that flows well. And so that's why it's really important. So I like that. I really do. So when it comes to like writing a conflict or resolution, do you find that difficult or do you feel like it's like easy to kind of get there?
I feel like those, for me, I think they're easy to get to.
Mhm,
I think, and feel free to challenge me on this,
mhm, mhm.
but I feel like it stems from character if you're having problems with conflict or resolution, because I feel like when you know your characters, the how they are creating conflict should be obvious.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. And then it's sort of like if you, especially in TV, if you know like the journey you're taking them on, you should know how that gets resolved
Yeah. Mhm.
because you should know what that looks like. So that's what I think, but that's also because my brain is very much in the space of like, we need to work on character development. So everything is a character issue in my mind right now.
No, I agree. I agree. Because sometimes I do, if I'm coming up with an idea for a show and I'm working out the pilot, I'm struggling like, what can the conflict be here? Who are they? So I really have to like go back to who the character is, like my A story, really figure that out, especially because I'm writing a lot of pilot scripts. So it really has to focus heavily on the A story, and the B story doesn't have to be that big, you know? So I'm really trying to figure out what's the conflict here? Why is it a conflict? And what's going to drive the story to not just a resolution for that episode, but then keep audiences want to come back for episode two, you know? And that's how you kind of have to look at it. Because I've watched a lot of breakdowns of how, like, you can have a conflict in a story, but the end of the episode doesn't need to wrap it up because that means you know it's gonna be told throughout the season. And that's what
Yeah.
again, what I love about TV, because you don't have to do that with a film. You can do that if you're gonna do like a sequel or something, and you can kind of like continue it like that. So I think that's what's really good. So okay, I like
Mm.
that. So when it comes to writers, who are some of your favorite writers?
Shonda Rhimes.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna get Shonda Rhimes, Peter Brunson, Issa Rae. Those
Yeah.
those are like my
Period.
top
Mhm,
my top writers.
mhm,
I'm trying to think. Oh, I'm so on the spot now. Um, but I also really like recently, I really enjoyed, and I can't remember who the writer is. No, I do. No, I don't. Nicole Taylor. I think she adapted One Day from David
oh, okay.
Nichols' book.
Mhm, mhm,
I really enjoy series, either limited or like ongoing, that move me in some way
mhm.
emotionally as well.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that one, and Tembi Locke wrote from scratch, which I really enjoyed. Um, I know I'm missing other people, but I just feel like Shonda's a winner all round because she's that girl. She's that woman. Um, but obviously like Michaela Cole also like really, really strong.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
And what's your
What about
favorite
you?
genre? Oh, go on.
No, I was gonna say, who are your favorites?
Um, got so many. Definitely the ones you mentioned, definitely. I had Mara Brook Akil in there.
Oh yeah.
Um, who else? See, I have an appreciation for Donald Glover and what he did with Atlanta,
Mm.
Issa Rae. I love films as well, so I do love the way Quentin Tarantino writes his scripts as well, and Christopher Nolan, especially non-linear narrative. I'd love
Hmm.
to write a script like that. So there's those as well. Barry Jenkins as well,
Yeah.
like his work. Did I say Issa Rae? I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Who else? See, even me on the spot. Like, there's loads I could sit
I
here
know.
and go on, but there's some I should actually do research on because there's a lot of shows. Like, there's a really cool counseling show which I really like called Being Erica. It's very old, came out late 2000s, and that was really about therapy and counseling and how you could go back in time to undo some of your regrets and how that what those moments shaped you in your life. And really
Yeah,
love that. And I really should know the writer of that. But I just thought that was a really great show as well. So
yeah.
yeah.
Another person I love, this is a UK person, Jimmy McGovern.
Oh yeah, okay.
I read Time before I watched the first series, and
Mhm.
it was like a page turner. Like I literally was like, "Oh my God," on the edge of my seat with the script,
Yeah,
and I was like, "Okay, I want to be able to write something like this because this is so cool."
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he's another one that just popped into my head.
Yes.
And also like honorary shout out to I went to see Shifters yesterday in theatre at Bush Theatre. And I was actually sat right next to the writer. I had no
Oh,
idea.
wow.
I was like, me and my friend were just like in there, like, oh my God, and like reacting and just going all crazy. And then at the end, the girl next to me was just like, oh, it's so weird to see like everyone's reactions. And I was like, oh, how many times have you seen it? She was like, I wrote it. It's like, wow. I was like, that's so cool. But it was like a really good, it was just again, just like beautiful writing, just
Yeah,
like so and like non-linear storytelling.
yeah.
So it was just like, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's my favorite like way of storytelling, and I would love to write a script like that because it just challenges you as an audience, and it
Mhm.
really kind of makes you think while you're watching. You're not just sitting there and watching the film or play or TV show play out. You're able to kind of really guess where this is going as well, and that's what I love about this industry as well. So yeah. So what kind of genres are you writing? What are they?
I'm all over the place at the moment. So
Okay.
because I'm like early on in like my screenwriting
Mhm.
journey, I haven't found like a particular genre where I'm like, I just want to do this. So I've started out with a sitcom. The next one I'm writing is effectively a tragedy. My log line,
Mhm.
like in conversation with people, is everybody dies. So
Very
I'm like,
Titanic of you. Okay.
I know. I'm like, everybody's dying. But yeah, so they're like night and day, right? Because I've gone from writing something that's very just like entertainment focused to
Yeah.
something that's very like heavy and is dealing with like death and grief. Um, and then I have like a dystopian idea, I have like sci-fi ideas. So I'm playing at the moment.
Mhm.
And I wanted it, I don't think that's an intentional thing. I mean, I don't know for you if like like when you get ideas I sort of I get them and I'm like, oh, this is like a TV idea, or like this is maybe like a plot, or this is a character idea, or like a world idea. And sometimes I've just got to bring all those pieces together to figure out like what is the actual idea that we're thinking of
Yes,
that
yes.
we might want to write. So yeah, I'm enjoying being in this like playing phase of just like figuring stuff out. But even like you were saying with the sci-fi one,
Mhm.
I feel like I'd love to do maybe like a short course or something on world building because
Mhm.
I have that idea and I'd love to do it, sort of like a Romeo and Juliet type story. But like I don't know where to start in terms of like world building. Like,
Yes, yes, I totally understand that.
what is this?
No.
Um, and I also wrote a radio play because I was just interested in like removing the visual element and just focusing on like, okay, if you've only got dialogue and like sound, what can you do with that, and sort of like what sides of your writing abilities can you strengthen
Yeah.
by doing that.
No, I get that. I get that. Because what you said about world building is so true. Like, that's why I'm struggling with that film. I'm like, I hit up my sci-fi writer friend. I was like, can we collaborate on this? Like, I have an idea. And she read it, the opening bit. She was like, oh, I love this. Let's brainstorm. I'm like, amazing. Because I don't know what the hell to do with this. But it's like, because sci-fi is such a specific genre and you have to write with that. And I feel like you have to be such an amazing creative mind to be able to come up with these worlds that they create. I just find it so fascinating. And I'm excited to tap into that. So I definitely understand that. I've mostly been known for comedy. So I
Mm.
do comedy or sitcoms, and I've been stepping into drama as well. So it's been heavily that as well. And when you were saying about how you come up with ideas, like I get random flashes of ideas all the time. I could be listening to a song or walking down the street or anything, and it just kind of pops into my head. So I kind of just try to jot something down in my notes and then go back to it and think, okay, this could be a film or this could be a feature film. So I've got loads of plots on my computer and I'm like, okay, let's structure it. So I've just decided to focus on my TV pilots now, then go to the feature films
Mm.
and see where we go like that. So for you, where do you want to go with your writing? Are you just now just writing just to improve, or are you really hoping to that work towards an agent and stuff like that? What's your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be represented by an agent. Um, but I actually read something on Twitter, not on Twitter, on Reddit the other day because I was like, I don't know what I was Googling. I think I was just in a space where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing the right thing? Like, do I need to
Yeah,
change
yeah,
course? I don't know what's happening. And this guy in the industry who's like been writing for like 30 years as a professional writer had written this Reddit post about his advice for emerging writers. And it was essentially like, you know, he was saying that having the goal of getting an agent in the early stage is not very productive because it's not something that you can really control.
yeah.
So he basically just suggested on like working on those like 2 to 3 samples that are like really strong that
Yeah.
represent your work and then going out to agents.
Mhm.
But just focusing on creating good
Yeah.
work and
Yeah,
writing at a
no, I
professional
totally agree
level,
with this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that's the main
Mhm.
thing to be focused on. So one of the things that I'm focusing on this year is just like increasing my output of scripts. So getting to first draft quicker. I think I spent I'm hesitant to say I spent longer than I needed to on the first draft of on drafting my first script.
Mhm.
I basically spent a year, but I did do 3 drafts of it. So I was
Okay.
like, technically,
Yeah, yeah,
I was doing work.
yeah.
But I do think I was like, actually, this year I'd like to get 3 first drafts done of scripts. So then I'm just like workshopping those.
Okay.
But yeah, I think ultimately the goal is to get represented. Ultimately, the goal is to like be in a writer's room and to have one of my own shows greenlit. That would be amazing. But yeah, I'm just like at the moment, just sort of focusing on getting good and getting that out there.
Okay.
So applying to like competitions and stuff like that as well.
Good. And have you thought about writing a short film so that you can have some of like the stuff you've written made? So at least it says Natalie Campbell-Reid on it. So people can see,
Oh,
visually what you've written.
yeah, I have thought about writing a short film. I've got an idea for a short that I haven't like I'm still trying to figure it out. And I think shorts are really interesting because I I don't know. I'm basically like, how do you tell a really good short story?
Mhm.
And I think that's the question. Maybe it's like I'm winding myself up and I should just be like, what story do I want to tell? And then
Yeah,
just
yeah,
tell it as a short
yeah. Mhm.
story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like I was like, I don't know. I have an idea and I want to do it as a short. But I just need to figure it out and
Okay.
how to actually
Mhm.
how to tell that story. Because I don't know, when you work on shorts, do you think of it as like a scene of a scene or a few scenes of a bigger story? Or do you see it as like a self-contained story?
No, I see it as a self-contained story, but it also depends on where you want to take it. So a lot of people do a proof of concept film for it
Mm,
to be a show or a film, a feature film. So, but I love short films which are just a short story,
mm,
because there's such beauty in short storytelling, and it really shows how good you are as a producer, writer, director, how you can really tell an effective story within a short space of time. And
yeah.
there's some really great ones. So I think for me, I would say to you, like, just watch as many short films as you can. I know you go to festivals and all that stuff, really watch them. Watch really small ones, which are like 5 minutes as well, and see how they're able to effectively do that. Sometimes some of the best short films don't even have that much dialogue. It's all about the description and how it looks visually, and then there's some which are really well written and it just has like two characters in it as well. So and that can feel longer than maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So yeah, I think just watch and then you'll be able to kind of break that down, because for me, when I started making content, I was doing short form content. So I knew the audience. I was looking at people who have short attention span, and I was like, how can I get this 3 act structure in 5 minutes? And I was
Yeah.
able to do that. And now it's really kind of pulling that to 20 minutes and 30 minutes and 60 minutes. And that's the challenge for me, but it's good.
Mm,
So, but I think it'll be good for you just because I love hearing the ideas you said, and it'll good just for people to see it, because people just want to see something, as
yeah.
well. But then also at the same time, not all, that's not always the case. I know some writers who've never made nothing, nothing, and they've got agents and that's it, you know. I've also know writers who've just somehow found their way into Channel 4's doors and they
Mhm.
got commission and that's when they got their agent.
Mhm.
So there's no real direct plan to success, even though you hear like so many different stories. Oh, this is what I did, so you should do it too. It's like it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that you're just writing and you're in the industry working. Sometimes if you're not in it, sometimes it's even harder because it's like, damn, I want to make money by this. And at least if you're in it, you're able to gain that advice. You can be like, hey, send a little email, can I pick your brain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think you're in
Yeah.
the right realm and you'll get there. So yeah.
Yeah, it's massively helpful to like be able to have a job in the industry. And like when I'm talking to people, talking to other writers, they're always like, "How did you get that job?" And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't.
The stars were aligned, okay?
We
That's
were
why.
aligned, you know. I did the interviews, I did the tasks, and I got it. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, it's one of those jobs. So you got to do a task.
No,
Listen.
it wasn't this like deep task. It was just
Okay, cool.
yeah, yeah,
'Cause I avoid those jobs like the plague. I'm like, oh, you want me to do a job
yeah.
later? Like, I'm
Yeah,
not.
it's like nothing that you had to do like anything more than like 15-minute prep for.
Oh, okay, fine,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, these people see out here, like, nah. It's listen. I've got PTSD. The industry's slow.
Honestly,
I've been getting loads of this stuff when I'm applying for jobs. I'm like, no. So
no free labor.
no, exactly. Look, I could go on a whole tangent about people who wanted me to present a whole marketing idea for me to produce for a client. And I was like, nah, it's all right. So
Oh,
yes, but that's good. So you're
yeah.
thriving, you got it, it's thriving, it's all good.
Yeah, but I'd love to create something that's
Mhm.
like tangible. So I think as well, that was one of the reasons. So I know I want to write a short, but I also wanted to do the radio play because I just thought those are two like easy-ish entry points to like get something out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
So what's some of the best screenwriting advice that you've received?
Oh, so much.
Mhm.
I have actually received so much. Okay, so I'm gonna go with so Shonda Rhimes, who I talk about constantly, apparently.
She's
Um,
come to the show now, so she can come
yeah,
on.
yeah. Well done, Shonda.
You know?
So when she was just basically saying, like, if you want to get better at writing, like read scripts, like read industry scripts.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's one of the reasons why, like, on the second draft of like my first script, when I'd done like a table read around it, someone was like to me, this is he was like, this is really surprising that this is like the second draft of your first ever script. It feels very like
Wow.
it feels very close, like it doesn't need much.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, that's really, really nice advice. But then I was like, oh, that's because I've been reading a lot. Like I was reading a lot of scripts. And I
Mm,
think when people have like, asked me how I've learned how to screenwrite, yeah, it was the master classes,
mm,
but I think a lot of it was just reading.
mm.
And I was like, oh, this is what I like. And not just reading it from the standpoint of like, because you know when you watch a show, and I I have to watch things multiple times because the first time I watch it, I'm just watching it as a viewer. Like I'm not criticizing it, I'm not breaking it
Yeah.
apart,
Yeah.
I'm not doing any of that. I'm
Hmm.
just here,
Hmm. Yeah,
just
yeah,
in
yeah.
a good time. And so when I'm like actually taking the time to read the script, I'm like, oh, okay, like I like how they did that, or I like what they're doing here, or like you can just see how it's actually been put together.
Yeah.
And to tag on to that, I can't remember who gave this advice actually. Can't remember. But someone had suggested if you have a script that you really, really love, rewriting it. And there's something about that process of like it really slows your brain down as you're like retyping the
Yeah.
script that's already written.
Mhm.
But it's just a really cool exercise because you're just like, oh, okay, like you can see it in like HD.
Yeah.
It's like I see exactly what you're doing here.
Mhm.
And a bit like osmosis, then you're just like, oh, this is how they wrote it. Like this is how a similar maybe style, not copying, but like
Mhm.
influence on like how you write your next one maybe. So that's good advice I've had there. And I think as well, the Reddit post I was telling you about,
Yeah, yeah.
that I read recently, that was really helpful. Um, I did a 1 day screenwriting course last year, like Philip Shelley did one. The guy who leads the Force screenwriting
Oh yes, I know that.
program.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, and he had a working screenwriter come in to talk to us, and she had basically said that she was working at this screenwriting thing for like 8 years before she ever saw any real success, like in terms of getting paid, I suppose. Um, and it just it just helped reset my brain because in my
Mhm.
mind I was like, yeah, like give me a year or two, like the naivety of just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
new to this industry, like yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
like it's all good. So it just helped me. That was just like, okay, so I need to reorient like where this sits in my life and like figure out how to be an adult in the world and pay bills and also continue to like service my creativity and that long-term dream of like being a screenwriter.
Mhm.
So that was really good practical advice, I would say, on how
No,
to
good advice. I hope
sustain a
whoever's
career.
listening likes to what they're hearing because it is about reading scripts and watching TV. Like watch
Mm,
it. It's better for me to study a show when I don't have the script, when I
mm,
know the show like off by heart, like I've watched it 10,000 times. That's when I'm able to really study it and look at what's at stake for the character. Through the cold open, do they do it there? Or is it completely unrelated? What's the A story? What's the B story? How have they done the conflict? Like, how have they wrapped it up? That's how I'm able to really study. If it's a brand new show like The Bear, I'm like, okay, listen, I'm just trying to watch this and enjoy it. Like, but if
yeah.
it's a show I've watched millions of times, I really can study it like that and pick it apart because you can't find not all your favorite scripts of your shows online. So yeah, so I think that's really, really good. So I want to end with this one. Let me see if this is controversial because it might not, I might be hyping it up and it might be nothing. But so what's your favorite and least favorite thing about writing?
Oh, okay. My least favorite thing about writing, I'll start there,
Mhm.
is, is just the oh, okay. Are we talking about the process or are we talking
Mhm.
about like the industry?
Hmm. Let's say the process. Yeah, we
Okay.
don't want to get too political. Let's do the process.
Yeah. No, I wasn't gonna get too
Okay.
sassy.
Okay,
But
cool,
like
cool.
no, so I would say in terms of like the process, I call like creativity like my flaky friend.
Mhm.
Like I try to be consistent with writing and especially with like having a full-time job. It's important for me. I like structure my mornings in a way that I have like an hour to focus on like screenwriting stuff before work. And for me, it's just like a signal to my
Mhm.
brain that this is important. So we're starting the day with this thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I use those hours, but there's some hours where like my friend creativity, she's not in the building.
Yes, yes.
She's nowhere to be found.
Oh my gosh. My friend likes to go to sleep a lot. Okay.
We had a time, we have an appointment, it's the
Mhm.
same time every day, and she's just not there. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I think I posted on Twitter like a couple of weeks ago. It's like I've done more spinning in my chair than I have writing because it's literally just not
Yes.
happening.
Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes.
So that's my least favorite part of the writing process. But I would say my favorite part, and it's probably the same for like most writers, is like when you're in the zone, when you're in that hum
Yeah.
and it's
Mhm.
just like a font and you're just there, it's just flowing from you. And it just feels like such an easy
Yeah.
process. You're just lost in the story. I
Yeah.
love, 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 love that part.
Yes, mine too, mine too. I just love it. It's just like you don't want this to end, and
Mhm.
you type so much. Like you're like, oh, when you finally reach your breaking point, you're like, wow, look how much I wrote. And then it's exciting going back and changing it and making your own edits, it's really cool. But yeah, definitely I agree with the least favorite. Yeah, because it's about, listen, when I want to write and it's like, damn, like where are you? Like for me, it's like, when I'm writing, like I'll set out today is the day. And then I probably won't start writing till 10 o'clock at night. I get weird like inspirations really late and I'm just writing, writing. And I'm like, where were you when I needed you? Like I'm on
Exactly.
Instagram, I'm doing all this, like it's just nothing can come out. But
Yeah. And then right before you're about to go to sleep,
yeah,
then it's like, oh
yeah.
my gosh, I should write
Mhm.
this and da, 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 and you're like, excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. But this is the thing, and this is one thing. Like when we both start writing for TV, it's gonna be like I'm gonna be getting so much advice from writers. Like, how do you write towards
Mm,
deadlines? Because I don't know how I'm gonna cope. Because the way how this brain wants to, our little friends just want to be going to sleep or decides to go out and have some fun. Like, how do you guys do it? And I would love to pick their brains on that as well, because it's just
mm.
such a interesting thing. Because I don't know how they manage it.
Yeah. I mean, I did Aaron Sorkin's masterclass as well, and he talked about that. Because he was like, when you're working to a deadline, you just have to write. Like there's,
Mm.
and I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get myself into a routine of like having this
Mhm.
block of time every day that I was writing, because I was like, even if my flaky friend creativity doesn't show up, I still need to be in the building and I still need to be writing.
Good,
So
good,
it's
good.
like, and I think as well, like what I'm doing most of the time when creativity is not around is judging myself, because I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, this is not good. Like
Yeah.
we need her to show up so we can write something good.
Good, good, good.
And it's I guess it's like quietening that voice so you can actually just write, even if it's writing badly, but you've got to put something on the page.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to do
Mm.
that more
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. I understand. So lastly, what are some of your favorite TV shows, or what would you also recommend people to watch?
Most recently, I have been screaming at the top of my
Mhm.
lungs about Domino Day because oh
Mhm.
my God, I didn't know I was missing it, but when I saw it, I was
Mhm.
like,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
like I was such a like my mom was not the person who liked witchcrafty things in the house, but when Charmed was on, nobody touched that remote. Like
okay.
nobody,
Yes.
everybody
I'm a
knew.
charmed listen, I know, I
Like,
know.
leave Natalie alone. She's watching
Okay.
Charmed. And so when Domino Day came out, I was just like, oh, it's just like to have like a black centered cast and to have
Mhm.
like the Obeah people in it, to be set in Manchester and it's all sexy and it's witchy and it's just like, oh,
Mhm.
just loved it. I was just like, this is
Mhm.
perfect.
I just love where we're at with Black British shows. Like, there's so many great variety out there, you know. And Lauren Sakura, the right creator of it, she's amazing. Like, she wrote on Gangs of London as well in the first season.
Mm,
And like, we've been mutuals on social media for a while, but we've never met. So
mm,
hopefully one day I can meet her. But like, so talented. I'm really proud of her, what she's been able to achieve, and I really hope that this lasts for a long time, because
yeah.
this is what we as creatives have been screaming for. So like, come on, like we need
Yeah.
season two, three, four. Like it needs to gain like a huge cult following, like Buffy and Angel and Charmed. Like I love that era of TV, and Domino Day does that. So yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
there's more. So yeah,
And I
great.
also massively enjoyed Dream a While Back. I have to shout out at Johnny because that
Mm-hmm.
was like
Mm-hmm.
chef's
Yeah.
kiss. Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. So good. And I really loved the Borders as well. Really liked
mhm,
that.
yes.
Like Borders, definitely one of my favorites of the year. I just feel like we've wanted shows like this and we're finally getting it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
I'm really looking forward to Ratman show coming out.
Supercell as
I'm
well.
super
Yeah,
excited to see that.
super excited. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. So I feel like, we need to get in there, get our stuff out as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The door has been kicked down, so now we just have to walk through it and get our stuff on there, you know? So it's good.
Lucky us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys did all the hard work. Appreciate you though. Right,
We
well,
thank you guys. Thank
yeah.
you for your sacrifice.
Well, thanks, Natalie, for coming on the show. It was great speaking to you about screenwriting and catching up as well. And I'm sure I won't forget you again. Okay. So where can
No.
people find you to like follow your screenwriting journey and stuff like that?
The best place to find me is on Twitter or X. So it's Natalie_ACR, and that's where I post about my screenwriting journey in all warts and all, basically, just the whole thing.
Mhm. And if you
Um,
are looking for stuff, you can go to Natalie for she know you might want to produce a soon for your films and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Like I'm always happy to connect, and I'm like in spring, I'm planning to be at more like networking events. So if you know anything that's going on, let me know, and I will be around.
Good, good. Well, great.
Thanks for having me. This has been
No, it's
amazing.
good having you. Thank you. Thank you. So thanks again, guys, for listening. You can follow me all on my usual socials. Twitter is at Kashif Podcast. You have to always remember that. And then Instagram and TikTok is at the Kashif Podcast. So yeah, stay tuned for more episodes like this coming soon.